Hi everyone! In this video, I would like to share with you everything I know about masking fluid. What masking fluid I am using, what tools I use to apply it and to remove it, and what to do if the masking fluid is already peeling the paper off. I hope this video will be helpful, and if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments. So what is this blue liquid that covers the page and protects the area, the illustration from watercolors? The answer is masking fluid. I have here masking fluid by the brand Pebeo. And even though they call it drawing gum, it's just the different name for masking fluid. This specific masking fluid is blue. The covered area will be nicely noticeable. You will know exactly where you applied your masking fluid. I know you can also buy pink one and white one or transparent, but I don't recommend to use white or transparent masking fluid because then you don't see where you applied it. That makes the work with it much harder. This specific brand, they also make masking fluid in pen. I don't have any at this moment, but I used to use it. The issue is that the tip was clogged all the time and it was very hard to get the masking fluid out of the pen. But the idea is good. Yes, of course. Like having masking fluid in pen suggests that you will have better control over the application. Well, but if there is no fluid going out of the pen, then there is nothing to manage, right? Let's talk about tools for application. It's important to keep in mind that masking fluid is actually a glue. So you can imagine if you put your brush into a glue and you leave it dry, which can take only few minutes, you may not be able to get rid of the residue from the glue, and the same applies for masking fluids as well. I know that it is recommended to cover your brush in soap before you dip it into the masking fluid. However, this trick never worked for me. Yeah, I damaged few brushes. Fortunately, I was always using brushes that I didn't mind to damage. So what will happen if you dip your brush into the masking fluid? Well, you can mask the area you need, yes, but the masking fluid dries super quickly. It means that it dries inside your brush bristles even before you finish covering the area. Unfortunately, the trick with the soap covers only the outer part of the bristles. So if the glue gets into it, like inside the bristles, which is not hard, then there is the problem. And you can see, for example, on this brush, the residue of the masking fluid here. And this is something I wasn't able to get rid of, and I will never be able to get rid of it. Because it's like a glue. It glues the bristles together, and not only on the outside, but even on the inside. Here is also some residue in the middle of the brush. And yeah, as I said, it's just like glue. You cannot get rid of it. I don't recommend to use brushes at no costs. But you can use silicone brushes, and they are so much better. The work with them is super easy, and you can even create very thin lines. So they are very versatile. It's not that hard to get them. These three were in a set from craft store because those are also used for crafting. And you can see here I have different sizes. I usually use only this one. I just like the shape and that I can get into details as well. I also have these mini brushes, which are also very great for details. These brushes are actually used for doing nails. As you can see, the application of the masking fluid with these silicone brushes is super easy, super comfortable, and cleaning the brushes is also very easy. The biggest advantage is that the masking fluid doesn't stick to the silicone. It means if you need to clean your silicone brush, you can just take a paper tissue and just wipe the masking fluid out of the brush. Now, before you will start to apply your watercolors, make sure that the masking fluid is completely dry. Don't use any hair dryer or any heat gun because that could destroy and damage the masking fluid and the paper, so you could end up harming the coloring page. And how do you know that the masking fluid is actually dry? Well, let me apply fresh masking fluid. First of all, it's lighter. I'm not sure if it's that well visible on the camera. Second, if you look against the light, you should see the difference between wet and dry. Wet areas will shine more, dry areas will be more matte. On this spot, this is now very nicely visible. There is only a small pool in the middle and it has different color, and it's basically clear that this small spot is still wet. But the best way how to be really sure if the masking fluid is wet or dry is to touch it. If I touch dry masking fluid, it's sticky, yes, but there is nothing on your finger. If you touch just lightly wet masking fluid, then you will have residue on your finger and you will see the mark after your touch. Now, how to remove masking fluid? There are many ways, but always make sure that the page is completely dry. If it's cold on touch, it means that it's still wet. And wet paper means fragile paper, which means that you can easily tear the whole page and ruin all your work. So, first of all, you can use your fingers and you can just rub the masking fluid. Yeah, that's one option. But if you have a large area to remove, then you can burn and hurt your fingers. So I don't recommend this. You can also use an eraser, but because eraser erase everything, you know, eraser erase, then you are risking that you will erase something on your page, something that you don't want to erase. Then of course you can take a paper tissue, wrap it around your finger and use it. Yeah, but it's not that bulletproof. What I use and what I really recommend is this masking fluid or glue eraser. It's very cheap and it doesn't hurt the paper at all. But what it does is that it will stick to the masking fluid. Can you see it? It's sticking and it's so easy to remove the masking fluid now. Also, it creates those balls, so you can easily remove it and just throw it away. Be careful if you want to remove the masking fluid that has a lot of paint on it, because even though the paint is already dried, it can still mark another areas. So in this case, I recommend to slow down a little bit and pay extra attention to removing the masking tape. And you can see that it left some residue here. You can try to erase it with electric eraser. You can see that it helped a little bit. I don't really mind it in our case because it will be covered with pencils. However, the same thing can happen in the area that is already colored. So just keep that in mind, that if you have a lot of paint, especially if you are using thick paint like white knights, then rather be careful and rather slow down than risk the page. Now you could say that, okay, so why we don't use just water and remove the smudged paint with water, right? Well, that's not that easy because first of all, even if you are using masking fluid eraser which is gentle to the paper under the masking fluid is already more fragile than the other parts. It may not be noticeable on touch when you are using colored pencils on top, but once you apply water on this area that was masked by masking fluid, the paper becomes much more fragile and it can actually start to peel off. Also, you cannot remove most of the paints completely from the page, and sometimes not even from 100% cotton paper. So I really don't recommend try to use water to remove the paint from the area that was masked with masking fluid. Now let's talk about peeling the paper. Even if you are very gentle, it still can happen. I think that the huge role in this plays the paper. I always use only this Pebeo masking fluid and it behaves differently in every coloring book. I usually don't have this issue with coloring books by Maria Trolle or Hannah Carlson or Johanna Basford, but in some of the Kirby's books and also in Dream Voyage, I experienced tearing the paper, not the full illustration that was covered, was peeling, but it happened on few spots on the page. So if that happens, you can try to go in opposite direction. So you will not continue peeling it like this, but you will go from the other side. Because here the paper is not damaged. So you will not continue peeling the paper. I'm not that sure why is this happening, because in those coloring books it usually happens only on a small part of the paper, so I guess the issue is in the paper, in how the paper is made. Something similar like we have sizing in watercolor paper, which is basically a treatment applied to watercolor paper that controls how quickly water and paint are absorbed into the surface. And for example, non-cotton papers, they usually don't use any sizing treatment. So that's why non-cotton papers are harder to work with. So I think this might be the same issue, but it is only what I personally think. However, one of my Patreon did a research and we talked about this topic a little bit. And she did a really amazing job on the research and she found out the solution or workaround that she tried and really worked. The trick is in using cornstarch before you apply masking fluid. So you dust the area with cornstarch and then you use a brush to remove the most of the dust. So you only see a slight haze and then you apply masking fluid. Well, I don't have any cornstarch, but I thought I could try this with soft pastels. For the demonstration, I take my Mungyo soft pastel and I will make a dust with a knife. So always be very careful when you are using a knife for dusting your soft pastels. Now I take my brush, and this brush is by the brand Renaissance, And this one is specifically made for soft pastels actually. The bristles are super soft, but I think maybe this brush will be too small. Well, let's see. And for the demonstration, I chose blue pigment, blue soft pastel intentionally so we can see where it is. But maybe it will be even better if I take my bigger brush. This is cosmetic brush actually, and normally I use it for cleaning the area after using an eraser. So I believe this is just something we want to achieve. Now let's try masking fluid. As you can see, it created few chunks. I don't know if this would be the case with cornstarch. Now, it seems that the masking fluid could be dry on touch. I have nothing on my finger, but I wouldn't be so sure because if you turn the page, it's still wet on the other side. And you can feel it. I think it's not that visible on the camera, but on touch, you can feel that the paper is very soft, very fragile. It's just not firm like the rest of the paper, and you can see the difference, the small dip if you are going over the area. Also, it's still cold on touch, so try to keep this on mind, and before you apply your watercolors, try to leave it dry completely from both sides. It is now a few days later, and I'm ready to peel off the masking fluid that was applied on soft pastel. I will be using my masking fluid eraser, and let's try it. Wow, so first try is perfect. The paper is untouched, which is amazing. And as we know from the previous tests, this paper is not very good and it was peeling. So let's remove the rest of the masking fluid. Alright, let's try to remove masking fluid on the other side that was applied before soft pastels. And yes, the page is all blue because when I was wiping off the dust, I was just smudge it all over the page, but you know that I applied this before using soft pastels. So let's see. And now nothing was causing damage on the paper. So I think I will have to try it again. First of all, I will apply masking fluid without the soft pastels. And now I will apply soft pastel. And yeah, I didn't dust the soft pastel because I just want to make a quick test. And I think this is good enough. It's maybe a little bit thicker layer. I think it's okay. Now I will leave this dry and then I will go back and hopefully we will see the difference. Alright, so it is now the next day and I'm really curious if there will be any difference on removing the masking fluid. I'm really curious if the paper will be damaged on the part without the soft pastels, or if there will be any difference on the part where we used soft pastels. I'm taking my masking fluid eraser and let's do it. And it seems good. It doesn't seem that the paper would be torn Alright, so without these soft pastels, I see no damage. I hoped there will be a little bit of damage, so I could prove this method. Let's see, how about this part? Also no damage. There is only a different shade of the color, but you also can see some marks from a masking fluid here on this part, but it's not that the paper would be peeled off. It's just that the masking fluid picked up the pigment from the soft pastels, and sometimes masking fluid just leaves bluish marks on the paper, but not on every paper. So again, it probably depends what paper you are using. I will give it one last shot on this paper where I know for sure that the masking fluid peeled the paper off. And I have some of the soft pastel already here, already applied from the previous tests. And I really hope this last test will prove something. It's windy today, so it dried quite quickly. I left it to dry it on air on the window. So let's try to remove it. Alright, so as you can see, the paper isn't peeled off, but I'm not sure if this really proved anything, because as we could see before I used soft pastels on this particular paper, the masking fluid damaged the paper on one part, but then when I tried to remove it from other parts, it was without any harm. But what I can say, that anytime I used soft pastels under the masking fluid, the paper was unharmed. I don't know, I will leave it up to you to decide if you want to try it with soft pastels or with cornstarch. I think it will not make any more harm and it can only help. And the result can be the same as without using this trick or better, so yeah, I think it's definitely worth trying. And again, for this demonstration I was using blue soft pastel, so we would have better visuals. But if you want to use it in coloring book, I recommend some white or very pale yellow, depending on the color of the coloring page. Or maybe it could be helpful to use colorful soft pastels. I can think of a case when you want to use it as a base layer, because you can see you will have some residue. Yeah, this is the option as well. Colored pencils work very well on soft pastels, so I think this could be used somehow. Alright, I hope this video was helpful, and if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments. Have a beautiful day and bye!